Chapter 36-74. Long Yanwei furrowed his brows tightly. After his deep gaze swept across Yizihua and Bai Cangming, he finally sighed helplessly and said, "I will try my best." "Thank you, Yanwei." A trace of seriousness surfaced on Bai Cangming's face, and he was no longer joking. It was already very difficult for Long Yanwei to agree to help him ask about this matter. With Long Yanwei's usual temperament, he had never interfered with such matters. "I am only going to ask. As for what decision Bailey Hongzhuang will make in the end, I have no control over it," said Long Yanwei. "I understand. If Bailey Hongzhuang is unwilling, I will not force her," replied Bai Cangming. If it were any other disciple of Penglai Palace, he might really use some coercive method. After all, he was the palace master. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was recruited by Long Yanwei, so he could not do that. Hearing Bai Cangming's words, Long Yanwei's eyes were filled with smiles. After Bailey Hongzhuang returned to her residence, she discovered that although there were still many cultivators paying attention to them, no one dared to disturb them. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. "Beichen, it seems that the idea we came up with is indeed very good. It saves us a lot of trouble." Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's soft and boneless hand over. Taking advantage of the situation, the latter sat on his lap and fell into his embrace. Master Long has an extremely high position in Penglai Palace. With his appearance, ordinary cultivators will naturally not dare to disturb us. Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face while his right hand played with her little hand. "What we should think about now should be the palace master and Master Long's final decision on how to distribute this healing medicine in the future." Bailey Hongzhuang hooked her arm around Beichen's neck and her beautiful lips curled up slightly. "What do you think the hall master will decide?" Beichen thought for a moment and said, "If I were the palace master, I would want to make this healing medicine a resource that everyone in the Penglai Palace can exchange for. Therefore, using points to exchange for it is undoubtedly the most appropriate." "Exchange points?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her amber eyes flashed with a thoughtful light, and then she understood. This is indeed an excellent method. As expected of the young sect master of Tiangang sect. Every time, he can think of the best way to deal with it from the perspective of the sect. "Wife, are you praising your husband?" Beichen gazed at Bailey Hongzhuang with his deep eyes. His voice was gentle and intoxicating. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Of course. Wife praises your husband so much. Your husband is overjoyed. I can only use one way to thank you for your praise." Beichen's lips suddenly curled up, but his eyes gradually deepened. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. "What way?" In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that the world was spinning. In the blink of an eye, she was pressed under Beichen's body. A pair of dishonest hands had begun to grope her. "Beichen." Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face blushed. "We haven't finished talking about the healing medicine. No hurry. But it won't be long before the hall master and the others should come to us. We have to think of a countermeasure." Beichen's fingertips gently pressed on Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips, blocking her words. "Wife, the most important thing now is to get down to business. Other things can be discussed later." Chapter 36-75. Knock, knock, knock. Everything was just as Bailey Hongzhuang had expected. Someone knocked on the door outside the house. Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked, and her face turned even redder. "Beichen," outside. Beichen waved his hand, and his elemental energy immediately surrounded the room, completely isolating the sound from the outside. "You!" Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Her hands were pressed against Beichen's warm chest, and her face was filled with helplessness. It could be Palace Master or Lord Long outside. "It's fine, they won't be so tactless." Beichen's lips curled, and his smile became even more devilish. "But, shoo." Beichen planted a deep kiss on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. "Wife, focus. Long Yanwei and Easy Hua knocked on the door for a while, but there was no response. The two of them looked at each other, and couldn't help but frown. What was going on? Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang and Easy Hua had already predicted that they would come here, so they closed the door and refused to see them? Seeing this, Ziren couldn't help but walk over. Greetings, Lord Long, Teacher E. When Ziren, do you know why Bailey Hongzhuang and Easy Hua didn't open the door? Long Yanwei asked. Didn't open the door? Ziren frowned. It shouldn't be. He quickly reacted, and swallowed the words in his mouth. Although his heart was still filled with doubts, he naturally made up a lie. Hongzhuang previously told me that she felt that the seniors in the inner palace had a huge demand for this healing medicine, so she wanted to make more. In order to prevent others from disturbing them, they might have used their elemental energy to isolate the sound from the outside. After hearing Ziren's explanation, Long Yanwei and Easy Hua finally understood, and they felt even more gratified in their hearts. They never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would actually think so much for her senior brothers and sisters in the inner palace. Master Long, why don't you go back first? When Hongzhuang and the others come out, I'll tell them to go to your palace. How about that? Long Yanwei nodded. All right, tell them that I have something to discuss with them. When Ziren heaved a sigh of relief after Long Yanwei and the other man had left. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other man's tightly shut door and felt extremely puzzled. What are Beichen and the others busy with right now? Logically speaking, he shouldn't have suddenly gone into seclusion. Shangguan Yingying heard the commotion outside and walked over. Maybe they're busy with something. Why don't we ask them when they come out? When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen opened the door, Long Yanwei and the others had already left. Bailey Hongzhuang glared angrily at Di Beichen, but when her expression fell into Di Beichen's eyes, it became extremely flirtatious. Wife, if you continue to look at your husband like that, your husband might not be able to control himself. Di Beichen smiled wickedly. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned, and guiltily withdrew her gaze. This guy had always been powerful, but he was also so powerful in this aspect. She had always been willing to admit defeat. When Ziren and Shangguan Yingying had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other man's movements. At this moment, when they heard the commotion, they immediately rushed over. Beichen, Master Long and Teacher E came looking for you just now, but what were you two busy with? Why didn't you open the door? Chapter 3676. Looking at Di Beichen's matter-of-fact and unguilty look, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a burst of admiration in her heart. If she didn't know what was going on, she would have believed Di Beichen's righteous look at this moment. Di Beichen glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang from the corner of his eyes as if to ask, "Am I not telling the truth?" Bailey Hongzhuang laughed in her heart. Back then, who knows how many people were deceived by Di Beichen's expression. This guy was actually a bad person. Master Long and the others must have come looking for you because of the healing medicine. I think you should hurry up and take a look. When Ziren said, Di Beichen nodded. Hongzhuang and I will go over now. Do you want to go together? We won't go. Ziren waved his hand. This healing medicine was made by Hongzhuang. It would be inconvenient for us to go together. In this matter, they had no intention of taking advantage of Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, it was not easy for Bailey Hongzhuang to develop this healing medicine. They had already benefited a lot from it. It would be inappropriate for them to go together now. Di Beichen also understood Ziren's thoughts and immediately said, Then Hongzhuang and I will go and take a look first. Go quickly. Shangguan Yingying smiled. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen arrived at the bedroom, Long Yanwei and Easy Hua were obviously waiting for them. Greetings, Master Long and Teacher E. The two bowed respectfully. Long Yanwei waved his hand. I called you here today to discuss something with you. Please speak, Master Long. The Palace Master already knows about this healing medicine. According to the Palace Master's idea, The best way to deal with this healing medicine in the future is to choose to exchange points. This is the fairest and most convenient way. Long Yanwei said slowly, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang and Yizihua, paying attention to the changes in their expressions. Hearing this answer, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen remained calm, but in their hearts, they already knew that the situation was exactly the same as Di Beichen thought. If this healing medicine is to be exchanged with points, then the quantity of this healing medicine must be increased. Bailey Hongzhuang alone may not be enough to make it. Therefore, the palace master hopes that you can hand over the prescription of this healing medicine. As a condition of exchange, you can ask for any heavenly treasure you want, as long as the Penglai Palace has it. At the same time, if this healing medicine is sold in the future, 20% of the profit will be yours. Long Yanwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression and said the conditions they had agreed on. Master Long has tried his best to fight for the best conditions for you. Yizihua followed up and said, 20%, this profit is very considerable. Similarly, if you agree, then you can directly become an inner hall disciple because of your great contribution and enjoy the treatment of an inner hall disciple. If it was an ordinary disciple, it was absolutely impossible to have such treatment. It was only because of the relationship between Long Yanwei and Bailey Hongzhuang and others that the palace master offered such good conditions. Chapter 36-77. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. They had already guessed that the Penglai Palace wanted to obtain the prescription. In fact, when Bailey Hongzhuang had decided to announce this news, she had already expected this to happen. Therefore, she did not find it strange at all. Long Yanwei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had fallen into silence and could not help but say, "If you're unwilling, there's no need to be conflicted. You can tell me directly. You were the ones who had researched this prescription. Naturally, you have the right to decide." Long Yanwei did not find this strange at all. In fact, if it had been anyone else, they would not have been willing to hand it over. Yizihua frowned. In fact, the palace master's offer was already very good. No matter how much healing medicine was sold in the future, 20% of it would belong to Bailey Hongzhuang. In this way, Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to get a lot of benefits without having to worry about anything. In comparison, this was undoubtedly much more convenient. Unfortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang was still unwilling. If the palace master were to find out about this result, he would definitely be very disappointed. However, at this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly said, "All right, I agree." Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Long Yanwei and Yizihua could not help but be stunned. They stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment and wondered if they had heard wrongly. "You said, you agree?" Long Yanwei asked with uncertainty. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her delicate head gently. Her voice was serious and steady as she said, "That's right, I agree." Seeing this, Long Yanwei and Yizihua could not help but look at each other. In fact, when Bailey Hongzhuang had refused previously, they were not surprised. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had suddenly agreed, they found it hard to believe. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen naturally noticed the astonishment on Long Yanwei's and Di Beichen's faces. They couldn't help but feel a little amused. It was rare to see such an expression on the other party's face. It seemed that their decision had greatly exceeded Long Yanwei's and Di Beichen's expectations. "Are you really willing?" Long Yanwei asked again. "Don't do something against your will because of the hall master's pressure or my existence. We all know how precious this prescription is." If he had been rejected, Long Yanwei would not have felt anything. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had agreed, he felt a burst of pressure. If Bailey Hongzhuang had made such a decision because of him, then he would have let Bailey Hongzhuang down. Seeing the worry in Long Yanwei's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood the former's thoughts. She was faintly touched in her heart. She never thought that Long Yanwei would actually be so considerate of them. Although they had never been well liked in Penglai Palace, It was already a great blessing to be able to receive Long Yanwei's sincere treatment. Master Long, you don't have to worry about us. We are willing to do this. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, although this prescription is precious, as a member of Penglai Palace, I will naturally not refuse if I can do something. Hearing this, Long Yanwei and Yizihua still did not understand. These words were dignified, but they did not conform to the inner feelings of ordinary people. Chapter 36-78. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a bright and resplendent light. The reason why healing medicine is so precious is because everyone has a need for it. As a doctor, saving others is part of my duty. Besides, the Hallmaster's conditions are not unjust to me. In this way, I will have the Hallmaster as my backer in the future. Why not? Long Yanwei, who had been very puzzled, finally understood after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's explanation. After hearing the reasons that the latter had listed out, he understood that the biggest reason why Bailey Hongzhuang had chosen to do this was because everyone wanted to protect the Shengxian continent. He could not help but feel shocked. It seems that he does not understand Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three well enough. He never thought that they would have such a selfless side to them. In this place where almost everyone placed their own interests above all else, it was rare for Bailey Hongzhuang to make such a decision. The Hallmaster will be very happy when he hears this news. A smile appeared in Long Yanwei's eyes. Previously, the Hallmaster was worried that his appearance would pressure you all, so he left first. Your decision has really surprised us. As he spoke, Long Yanwei's eyes lit up and he continued, I've already asked for 4 fire fruits from the Hallmaster. Furthermore, the Hallmaster will also give you some rewards. Aside from that, if you need anything else, you can also ask the Hallmaster. You've made such a great contribution, I'm sure that the Hallmaster will not refuse. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen raised their eyebrows. However, when they saw Long Yanwei's treacherous look, they could not help but find it funny. It seems that the Hallmaster was not the only one who liked to rob Long Yanwei. Long Yanwei also liked to take advantage of the Hallmaster. Yanwei, you're not just protecting your disciples. If the Hallmaster sees you like this, he'll probably feel extremely helpless. Yizihua sighed. Previously, Long Yanwei had already placed great importance on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had handed over the prescription, it was even more incredible. Even if the Hallmaster is here, he will agree. Long Yanwei chuckled. Earlier, Palace Master was lamenting that the Demon Training Tower had actually produced such a genius doctor. Now that our Penglai Palace has also produced a genius doctor, Palace Master doesn't have to envy the Demon Training Tower anymore. Yizihua nodded. That's true. For so long, only the Magic Training Tower's healing medicine had a certain effect on dark energy. I didn't think that Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine would have an even better effect. No one would be more depressed than the 100 Flowers Gate once the news got out. The 100 Flower Gate has always been known for its alchemy and medical skills. Who would have thought that it would be the Demon Training Tower first, and then our Penglai Palace? This is quite embarrassing for the 100 Flower Gate. Listening to the conversation between the two, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's expressions suddenly became interesting. Thinking back, the 100 Flower Gate had tried their best to invite them to join. However, not only did they not join the 100 Flower Gate, they joined the Penglai Palace instead. If the 100 Flower Gate knew that the healing medicine this time was produced by Bailey Hongzhuang, they would probably be very depressed. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's strange expressions, Long Yanwei could not help but ask curiously, "What's wrong? Why do the two of you have such expressions?" Chapter 36-79. Am I wrong? Long Yanwei asked doubtfully. Di Beichen chuckled, and his handsome face became even more dazzling. Even though Long Yanwei and Yizihua were men, they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. This kind of appearance was really monstrous. Master Long, The genius doctor of the demon training tower that you mentioned is actually Hong Zhuang. Following Di Beichen's words, Long Yanwei couldn't help but be startled. For a moment, he couldn't react. Immediately after, his pupils dilated as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. The doctor of the demon training tower is you? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said calmly, "That's right, it's me. I remember now." Long Yanwei's eyes lit up. "When I recruited you, you said that you wanted to return to the demon training tower. So that's how it is." At that time, we were preparing to return to the demon training tower to gain experience. However, after being recruited by you, we did not return to the demon training tower. In that case, didn't I accidentally recruit the genius doctor of the demon training tower? Steward Qin of the demon training tower must be so angry that he stomped his feet. Long Yanwei was astonished. He never thought that the cultivator that he had his eyes on was actually the genius doctor that everyone was talking about. That was a delicious cake that everyone was fighting to recruit. He actually didn't know that he had recruited him? If it was said that before, everyone felt that it was a waste for Long Yanwei to pay the price of 3 demon pet eggs to recruit them back. Presumably, now that everyone knew the real situation, they would no longer have such a feeling. On the contrary, everyone would feel that this deal was really worth it. We didn't go back, so we don't know what kind of mood Steward Qin is in. However, based on how much importance Steward Qin placed on Hong Zhuang, I'm afraid that is indeed the case. The corner of Di Beichen's mouth slightly raised. Bailey Hongzhuang's position in the demon training tower was already very high, and Steward Qin wanted to use all kinds of resources to obtain the prescription from Bailey Hongzhuang. Thinking about it, they had not returned after leaving this time, so Steward Qin must be very anxious in his heart. However, they didn't plan to stop going to the demon training tower in the future. After all, they still had to find a way to obtain the inheritance of the demon training tower. Right now, they were just trying their best to increase their cultivation and increase their chances of success. Wait! Yizihua raised his right hand and walked to the center of Di Beichen and the others. There was still a trace of doubt in his eyes. "I'm a little confused. You mean to say that the medicine from before was made by Bailey Hongzhuang?" "That's right. Hong Zhuang is the genius doctor that you've been longing for," Long Yanwei said with a smile. "It can't be." Even with Yizihua's indifference at this moment, he could not help but open his mouth wide. "Isn't this too much of a coincidence?" "It is indeed a coincidence." Yizihua immediately gave Long Yanwei a thumbs up. "I take back what I said before. Yanwei, your eyesight is simply superb. It's fine if you don't make a move, but the moment you make a move, you've directly recruited the genius doctor that the hall master has been longing for. I was wondering why you were able to make such a healing medicine. Now I finally understand." Yizihua sighed. Thinking about it, other than the people from the demon training tower, no one else knew that this genius doctor was actually so young. I can guarantee that when the hall master finds out about this news, he will definitely be overjoyed. Chapter 3680. Everything was just as Long Yanwei and Yizihua had expected. When Bai Tsangming found out that Bailey Hongzhuang was the doctor he had been sighing about, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually agreed, he was even more overjoyed. Bailey Hongzhuang really agreed? Bai Tsangming was still in disbelief. Although he had placed all his hopes on Long Yanwei, he still felt that it was unbelievable when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had really agreed, because this was indeed not an easy matter to decide on. Long Yanwei nodded and took out an envelope from his bosom and handed it to Bai Tsangming. "She has already left behind this prescription. Palace Master, Bailey Hongzhuang has already done this. You have to think about it carefully. If you mistreat her, it would be too unreasonable." Bai Tsangming took the envelope in astonishment. After opening it and glancing through it, he couldn't help but nod. Indeed, Bailey Hongzhuang is so cooperative. I will definitely not mistreat her. Yanwei, I really didn't expect that you would have such good eyesight when recruiting a cultivator. I previously heard that the 100 Flowers Gate was trying their best to recruit Bailey Hongzhuang, but they didn't succeed. At that time, I was still wondering where this genius doctor had been recruited by. I didn't expect that she would actually come to our Penglai Palace. In that case, you have also made a great contribution, Palace Master. Since you feel that I have also made a great contribution, shouldn't you return the demon pet eggs that you robbed from me? Long Yanwei raised his eyebrows. I paid such a huge price to recruit the genius doctor that you have been longing for. You have the nerve to rob the demon pet eggs from me? Hearing that, Bai Songming's expression froze for a moment, then he smiled brightly. These demon pet eggs can't be taken back. I have even reserved their master. I should indeed thank you for this matter. However, with our many years of friendship, we are well aware of some things. If you need my help in the future, just tell me directly. Long Yanwei rolled his eyes when he saw Bai Songming's expression that seemed as if he intended to go back on his word. He'd known Bai Songming for so many years, and he was extremely familiar with Bai Songming's methods. Speaking of which, why did Bailey Hongzhuang refuse the 100 Flowers Gate's invitation? Yizihua frowned. Previously, when I tried to recruit them, they didn't plan to pay attention to me at all. Even if I brought out the reputation of Penglai Island, they were still unmoved. It could be seen that they didn't have any thoughts about joining forces. It was only when I said that I wanted to give them demon pet eggs that they began to be moved. Come to think of it, if I didn't offer the condition of the demon pet egg, then it would definitely be impossible to recruit them back. Long Yanwei shrugged. Thinking back to when he was rejected, he felt very embarrassed. However, now that he knew that the 100 Flowers Gate was also rejected, he felt much better. In my opinion, this Bailey Hongzhuang most likely focused on cultivation instead of medical skills. It is precisely because of this that she refused the invitation of the 100 Flowers Gate. Otherwise, no doctor or alchemist would refuse. Think about it carefully. Bailey Hongzhuang has been in the Penglai Palace for quite some time. She has been training like other cultivators. If it wasn't for this prescription being taken out this time, many people might not even know her identity as a doctor. Chapter 3681. The Palace Master is right. Bailey Hongzhuang did not focus on cultivation. Yizihua nodded, but his expression became interesting at the same time. If that's the case, Bailey Hongzhuang did not focus on medical skills at all, but she was still able to achieve this. Her talent in medical skills is too amazing. Bai Songming and the other two looked at each other. If they thought about it carefully, this was really terrifying. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen returned to their residence, they were greeted by Wen Ziren and Shangguan Yingying. Both of them looked curious. How was it? What did you say? Let's talk inside. Di Beichen smiled faintly. So you've handed this prescription to the Palace Master? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. That's right. We've already made this plan long ago. This way, it'll be much more convenient. Ziren thought for a moment, then nodded. You're right. 20% of the profit is already very high. With Penglai Palace's ability, once this healing medicine is sold to the outside world, the sales will definitely be huge. Although it's only 20%, the number you'll receive will definitely be very shocking. Indeed. The corners of Di Beichen's lips raised slightly. From the perspective of Penglai Palace, this ratio is indeed very high. I think the Palace Lord should be giving us special preferential treatment because of Lord Long. At first, he was very surprised when he heard this condition. From the perspective of a force, it was usually impossible to offer such a high ratio. Master Long is indeed very good to us. He has been taking care of us since we came here. Shangguan Yingying's eyes shone with joy. Now that you've handed this prescription over, I think your status in Penglai Palace will be very different in the future. Even if we don't hand this prescription over, our status will already be different. You can see it from the attitude of the inner palace disciples. Ziren chuckled. We don't have any enemies in the outer palace now. Basically, no one will dare to cause trouble for us. Right. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly lit up, and then she took out 2 fiery red fruits from her bosom. This is what Master Long just gave us. What's this? Shangguan Yingying looked at the 2 bright red fruits, her face full of curiosity. The 2 fruits were fiery red in color, and there was a flowing luster flickering within them. At a glance, one could tell that they were filled with rich energy. Fire fruit. This is the fiery fruit? When Ziren was surprised. Supposedly, this fiery fruit is capable of tempering one's cultivation, and it's even capable of assisting a cultivator's cultivation to advance a step further. It's a treasure that practically all cultivators pursue, but it's extremely difficult to come by, and even the Cloud Word sect doesn't possess such a treasure. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. You have a good eye. Of course. Although I'm not as good at distinguishing medicinal herbs as you are, I know a lot about heaven and earth treasures. A trace of pride appeared between Wenziren's brows. He had studied these treasures in the past. This is what Lord Long got from the Palace Lord for us. With this fiery fruit, our strength can be improved. Di Beichen said aloud. Chapter 3682. Master Long is indeed very good to you. This fiery fruit must be a very precious treasure in Penglai Palace. Ordinary cultivators would never be able to obtain it. Shangguan Yingying's tone was filled with envy, but her smile was very sincere. However, you have made such a great contribution this time. It is only right that you receive such a reward. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Indeed, with these fiery fruits, our cultivation can take another step forward. As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang handed the fiery fruit to Shangguan Yingying. You must also take advantage of the medicinal power of this fiery fruit to break through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Looking at the 2 fiery fruits in her hands, Shangguan Yingying could not help but be stunned. Us? Yes. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded as if it was the right thing to do. Master Long gave us a total of 4 fiery fruit. It is just enough for the 4 of us. Let's take advantage of this opportunity to break through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shangguan Yingying and Wenziren could not help but look at each other in surprise. They had only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had fiery fruit. They did not expect that the 2 of them would also have fiery fruit. This healing medicine was developed by you. The 2 of us did not help you at all. How can we accept such an expensive thing? Ziren waved his hand, his attitude was very firm. Speaking of which, ever since they had arrived at Penglai Island, Bailey Hongzhuang and her husband had already helped them a lot. This fiery fruit was very precious. If they accepted it just like that, it would be too shameless. We are a team. Naturally, everyone should have a share of this. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. In her heart, the 4 of them were already a team. The improvement of the team was her improvement. Ziren is right. Shangguan Yingying also said, Hongzhuang, you've already helped us a lot. We can't accept this kind of thing anymore. Looking at Shangguan Yingying and Ziren's resolute faces, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichen. After all, Di Beichen and the other 2 had grown up together, so there was no need to worry so much. Hongzhuang has already put it this way. Why do you refuse? Di Beichen's expression was gentle. Don't we share blessings and misfortunes together? Don't tell me that you don't want to share the burden with us in the future? Beichen, you know that's not what we meant, Ziren said. Di Beichen's lips curved slightly. Since that's not what you meant, then there's no need to say anything more. Just accept it. Otherwise, it means that you're not willing to treat each other with sincerity. Ziren's lips froze. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't. He looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying, then nodded and said, All right, no more pleasantries. Everything depends on action. That's right. Di Beichen patted Ziren's shoulder. We've known each other for so many years. There's no need to be so formal. You should take advantage of this fire fruit's medicinal power to break through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm as soon as possible. Otherwise, it won't be easy for you to catch up to my cultivation. Xiren rolled his eyes. So what if I break through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm? You might break through to the 7th level of the Purple Realm directly. I won't be able to catch up to you then. Although you won't be able to catch up, it's still better than the gap widening. Bachin chuckled. Chapter 3683. The 4 of them each took a fiery fruit and went into seclusion. Since they had obtained such a treasure, it was better to consume it as soon as possible. The tempering process after consuming the fiery fruit was not something that could be completed in a short period of time. It would take at least a few days because cultivators who had reached the Purple Realm had a lot of elemental energy stored in their bodies. Naturally, it would take a long time to purify all the impurities. For cultivators, the longer the tempering time, the better. This way, the tempering would be more thorough. Long Yanwei was not surprised when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 had gone into seclusion. However, the auction was still organized. It was an internal auction of Penglai Palace. There was only one item to be auctioned, healing medicine. Although there was only one item to be auctioned, the cultivators of Penglai Palace were still enthusiastic. They were even more enthusiastic than when they attended the auction on a normal day. Before Bailey Hongzhuang went into seclusion, she had already handed over the auction to Long Yanwei. She did not intend to participate. Long Yanwei also smiled and agreed. He would just wait for the auction to end and give the points to Bailey Hongzhuang. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 came out of seclusion, the auction had already ended. It seems that all of us have done well. We have all successfully reached the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Wen Xiren and Shangguan Yingying in front of her. She could feel that everyone's aura had strengthened. Shangguan Yingying's face was filled with a joyful smile. Yes, we were still some distance away from breaking through the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Now, with the help of the fiery fruit, we have directly broken through. Not only that, the elemental energy in our bodies seems to have become stronger after the tempering. This fiery fruit is indeed a treasure. Indeed. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. The purer the elemental energy, the more stable our foundation will be. It will be helpful for our future advancement. Bachin, have you broken through to the 7th level of the Purple Realm? Xiren's gaze fell on Bachin. At this moment, Bachin's aura was completely restrained, so he could not determine. Hearing this, Bachin smiled and nodded. Seeing this, Xiren couldn't help but cover his face with one hand and said helplessly, "It seems that it's not easy for me to catch up to you." After consuming the fire fruit, he had successfully broken through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm, but there was still a long way to go before he could break through to the 7th level of the Purple Realm. Bachin had now successfully broken through to the 7th level of the Purple Realm. Although it was only a single level of difference, the difference in elemental energy was significant. The future is long. Perhaps there will be a chance in the future. Bachin raised his eyebrows. Although he was comforting Xiren, he did not believe that Xiren would have such an opportunity. By the way, Hongzhuang. Shangguan Yingying walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and said, "We have been in seclusion for a few days. I think the auction should be over by now." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "It was held 3 days ago. It has already ended. We will know when we go to Master Long's place later." The rules of the auction had already been set. Cultivators would exchange points for point. It didn't matter whether she was there or not, so there was no need to waste any time. "I think there must be a lot of points this time." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "After we get these points, I plan to take a look at the resource room and see if I can find some suitable cultivation resources." Chapter 3684. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's words of concern, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a lotus-like smile. Ying, I understand. I just want to see if there are any treasures that can improve my mental strength. Now that my cultivation is improving at a good speed, the improvement of my mental strength is slightly slow. So, I want to find treasures in this area to improve. She usually did not spend much time on alchemy, but her alchemy skills had been steadily improving. That was because her mental strength was much stronger than cultivators of the same cultivation. However, during this period of time, the improvement of her mental strength had been slower than her cultivation. If this continued, it would not be a good sign. So, she thought of this method. Compared to treasures that could improve cultivation, treasures that could improve mental strength were much rarer. However, Penglai Palace was a top force. She felt that there might be some. I see. Shangguan Yingying suddenly understood. Although this kind of treasure is hard to find, with Penglai Palace's foundation, they should still have some. I don't know. We'll know when we see it tomorrow. Then I'll go with you. Okay. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen went to Long Yanwei's palace. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying's figures, Long Yanwei's eyes suddenly filled with a smile. You guys have been in seclusion for a longer time than I thought. It seems that the harvest is not bad. This is all thanks to Sir's help. Otherwise, it would have taken us a long time to improve. Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her hands. Long Yanwei smiled and waved his hand. Although I helped, it was mainly because of your own ability. If it were not for you guys concocting this healing medicine, I would not have been able to get this fiery fruit from the palace master. No matter what, we will remember Sir Long's care in our hearts. We dare not forget. Di Beichen's deep eyes flashed with sincerity. On Penglai Island, he was only grateful to two people. One was Di Yujue who saved him, and the other was Long Yanwei. The effect of this auction is very good. The number of points obtained from the auction is not small. I have already instructed someone to transfer these points to your points card. Long Yanwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. There are many treasures in the Penglai Palace's resource room. You can use these points to exchange for what you need. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She didn't think that Long Yanwei had directly transferred the points to her point plate. After coming out of seclusion, she didn't even notice the changes on her point plate. Now that she glanced at it, her pupils couldn't help but dilate a little, and the astonishment on her face became even more obvious. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's astonished expression, Long Yanwei couldn't help but laugh. Isn't this number more than you think? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Indeed, it's much more than I expected. You still underestimated the importance of this healing medicine in the hearts of the Inner Palace disciples. If you had also participated in this auction, you would have understood everyone's eagerness. Long Yanwei smiled faintly. This prescription is too important to everyone in Penglai Palace. Therefore, the Palace Master has decided to directly grant you the status of Inner Palace disciples. Following Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were both stunned. Become Inner Palace disciples? Chapter 3685. Cultivators who have made outstanding contributions to the Penglai Palace can be directly promoted to Inner Palace disciples. Originally, only you, Bailey Hongzhuang, had this qualification. However, this healing medicine is too important for Inner Palace cultivators. In addition, we considered that you are a team and it would not be appropriate to separate you. In addition, the four of you are not weak. Therefore, we have decided to let you all become Inner Palace disciples together. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen could not help but look at each other. Originally, they wanted to participate in the Inner Palace disciple assessment. They did not expect that they would be able to become Inner Palace disciples without the assessment. However, becoming Inner Palace disciples is not only a motivation for you, but also a pressure. The Inner Palace disciples are usually much stronger than the Outer Palace disciples. Since you are joining as an exception, it is inevitable that you will attract some attention. According to my judgment, the inner palace disciples know that the healing medicine was developed by you and will not target you. Therefore, there is no need to worry too much. After all, from another perspective, you are their saviors. We understand. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen nodded. Thank you, Palace Master and Master Long. The Palace Master has been in a good mood recently. He originally planned to tell you the rewards personally. However, after knowing that you were in seclusion, he did not disturb you and directly handed the rewards to me. As he spoke, Long Yanwei took out a Qianquan bag and handed it to Bailey Hongzhuang. This is the reward the Palace Master gave you. There must be a lot of treasures inside. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. She did not expect the Palace Master to give her other rewards. Presumably, the rewards given by the Palace Master would not be bad. From today onwards, you are Inner Palace disciples. Later, pack your things and you can live in the Inner Palace. As for the training grounds, due to your current cultivation bases, you can decide where you want to train. Usually, the cultivation of Inner Palace disciples has reached Purple Realm 7th level and above. With your current cultivation, there is still a gap. It is more dangerous to enter the training ground of the Inner Palace. I think there is no need to rush in for the time being. Thank you for your concern, Master Long. We understand. I believe that you all know what to do. In any case, consider it yourselves. Long Yanwei smiled faintly. If there are no problems, you can go back and rest. At this moment, Di Beichen suddenly said, Master Long, we plan to leave Penglai Palace for a while. Leave Penglai Palace? Long Yanwei frowned in confusion. Where are you going? Back then, when we went to the Demon Training Tower, we had wanted to try and see if we could obtain the Demon Training Tower's legacy. However, back then, our cultivation bases were not high enough. Now that our cultivation bases have increased, it just so happens that we cannot go to the training grounds of the Inner Palace for the time being. Thus, we plan on going to the Demon Training Tower. Di Beichen had a serious expression. They had never given up on the inheritance of the Devil Training Pagoda. Now that they had some free time, it was also extremely suitable for them to go to the Devil Training Tower to explore. If they could obtain the inheritance of the Devil Training Pagoda, then they would have some additional means when they came to this training ground. Chapter 3686. I see. Long Yanwei came to a realization. Penglai Palace doesn't stop cultivators from going out. Usually, many cultivators want to go to the Demon Training Tower. You guys can go, but be careful. Yes. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Ying returned to their residence, they mentioned their plan to Xiren and Wenxiren. Wenxiren immediately agreed. We really should go back to the Demon Training Tower. Although we don't know if we can get the inheritance, we have to try. Shangguan Ying nodded. We are now cultivators of the 6th level of the Purple Realm. We don't have to worry about others discovering our cultivation and not daring to reveal our identity. Think about how sullen we were before. This time, we can go back openly. Looking at Wenxiren and Shangguan Ying's excited faces, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was as bright as a flower. Then this time, we will go back as Penglai Palace's Inner Palace disciples. Now, they were no longer the rookies they were when they first came to Penglai Island. They needed to be careful everywhere. Moreover, with the identity of Penglai Palace's disciples, they were no longer the same as before. When do we leave? Shangguan Ying was in high spirits. She could not wait to return to Penglai Palace. We have to pack up now and then go to the Inner Palace to find a new residence, Di Beichen said slowly. Also, Hongzhuang needs to go to the resource hall to find the treasures she needs. We will leave in 2 days. Hearing this, Xiren nodded. Okay. The 4 of them quickly packed up and followed the cultivator who came to guide them to the Inner Palace. As the 4 of them walked all the way to the Inner Palace, they suddenly realized that the Inner Palace was at the back of Penglai Palace. It was different from the Outer Palace disciples. This was the real center. Not only was the location different, but even the buildings were slightly different. They were more reserved and noble. Judging from the buildings, the number of inner palace disciples is indeed much less than the outer palace disciples. When Xiren looked around. However, the inner palace disciples are indeed stronger. I haven't seen anyone with a weaker aura than me. Baichen's expression was calm and reserved. He lowered his voice and said, "The inner palace disciple assessment requires cultivators of the 7th level of the purple realm and above. It's natural that you haven't seen any cultivators with a weaker aura than you. So, you need to be more careful in the future. If you are surrounded by inner palace's cultivators, it will not be the same as when you were in the outer palace." 7th level of the 7th level of the purple realm? I2. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed and patted Wen Xiren's shoulder. "There is always a mountain higher than the other, just get used to it." The inner palace cultivators looked at them curiously. "Isn't that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3? Why are they in the inner palace? Haven't you heard? Bailey Hongzhuang gave the prescription of the healing medicine to the palace master and made a great contribution. Therefore, the palace master made an exception and accepted them as inner palace disciples." Chapter 3687. Although they haven't been in the Penglai Palace for long, their presence is stronger than those of us who have been in the inner palace for several years. Who in the entire Penglai Palace doesn't know their names? What you said is true. I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills to be so experienced. With that healing medicine, our safety will be greatly improved. I can understand the palace master's approach. 100 Flowers Gate hasn't been able to develop it until now, but our Penglai Island has. Isn't this the pride of our Penglai Island? That's true, but the person who developed this healing medicine is Bailey Hongzhuang. The people behind her are completely basking in her glory. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were a walking topic. No matter where they went, it was inevitable that they would be talked about. It's just that when everyone was talking about it, when Xiren's face couldn't help but be a little ugly. Speaking of which, his achievements in Penglai Palace were indeed inseparable from Bailey Hongzhuang. For this, his heart was already very guilty. At this moment, when everyone mentioned it in front of him, his mood was naturally very complicated. Baichen noticed the change in Xiren's mood and hugged Xiren with his big hand. "These people are all envious and jealous. If you care about it because of this, then it's not fair." "Yeah, aren't they envious that we have a friend like Hongzhuang?" Shangguan Yingying chuckled. "I'm very calm. What's the big deal? They're all envious." When Xiren, who was originally a little depressed, couldn't help but laugh after hearing what Shangguan Yingying said. "You guys are too shameless to comfort yourselves like this. Shameless is the only way to have a bright future," Xiaohei said with a smile. Under the guidance of the person who came, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 people came to their living area. As soon as they walked into the house, they found that the room was obviously more spacious and bright than the residence in the outer palace. Even the decorations inside were more meticulous. It was obviously not on the same level. The treatment of inner palace disciples is indeed different. Just the living area alone is much more luxurious. Shangguan Yingying walked to the side and sat down. With their encounters in the Penglai Palace, the living environment was constantly improving. This place is indeed more comfortable to live in, and the concentration of primary energy here seems to have increased. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Xiren looked at the environment in front of him and said, "Although the living area is good, most of the time we are busy training. The time we live here is really too short." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 looked at each other and then sighed. "This is true. I think the other disciples in the inner hall are the same as us. Hongzhuang, shall we go to the resource room to take a look later?" Shangguan Yingying suggested. I also want to see what kind of rich cultivation resources the Penglai Palace's resource room has. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. Ziren, are you guys going? We won't be going. Ziren waved his hand. We are Inner Palace disciples now. Beichen and I will go find Senior Rin and the others. After all, we plan to leave in 2 days. We probably won't be back for a while. Chapter 3688. After making their decision, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 walked out of the house together and prepared to head to their respective residences. However, not long after they walked out of the house, they suddenly saw an unexpected figure. Ao Lingxiao? Ziren looked at the figure in front of him in surprise. Why are you here? Compared to Ziren's surprise, Ao Lingxiao was very calm. When Ziren, we meet again. I've also become an Inner Palace disciple. We can often meet again in the future. Listening to Ao Lingxiao's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's faces were filled with astonishment. When did you become an Inner Palace disciple? It doesn't seem like it's the time for the Inner Palace disciple assessment. With Ao Lingxiao's strength, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not doubt that he had the strength to become an Inner Palace disciple. They could tell that Ao Lingxiao was very strong from their previous experience together. However, it was not the time for the Inner Palace disciple assessment. Even if he had such strength, he had to pass the assessment first. Ao Lingxiao raised his eyebrows. I've passed the Inner Palace disciple assessment long ago. It's just that I've never been interested in entering the Inner Palace, so I stayed in the Outer Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were stunned again when they heard that. However, they understood in their hearts. From beginning to end, Ao Lingxiao was not interested in the Inner Hall. The reason why he appeared here was nothing more than his interest in Di Beichen. It seemed that Ao Lingxiao wanted to be a follower to the end. Although you've become an Inner Palace disciple now, we can't train together for the time being. Di Beichen smiled faintly. We still have some things to do, so we'll be leaving first. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 followed behind Di Beichen and left together. Ao Lingxiao was puzzled by Di Beichen's words, but he did not ask. Now, I feel that this Ao Lingxiao is becoming more and more strange. Every Outer Palace disciple yearns to become an Inner Palace disciple. Moreover, he has clearly passed the test, yet he still insists on staying in the Outer Palace. Using normal logic to explain this is truly inexplicable. Shangguan Yingying shook her head and frowned. She really couldn't see through this inexplicable guy. Maybe people with ability have such a bad taste. Bailey Hongzhuang spread out her hands, but her expression was very calm. In her previous life, she also knew a lot of people with weird personalities. Perhaps they felt that life wasn't interesting enough, so they added some color to it. Now that you mention it, it's even stranger. Since he's not interested in what everyone else is interested in, why is he so interested in Beichen? Shangguan Yingying's eyes fell on Di Beichen. After pondering for a moment, she suddenly widened her eyes. Could it be that Ao Lingxiao is gay? PFFF. After hearing this, Ziren, who was walking, couldn't control his emotions. Then, he choked on his own saliva. Cough, 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 Yingying, aren't your thoughts a bit too exaggerated? However, Shangguan Yingying said in a serious tone, I think my thoughts are very reasonable. You see, with Beichen's appearance, normal people would be mesmerized. If this Ao Lingxiao is gay, then isn't it normal for him to fancy Beichen? Chapter 3689. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was a bit strange. She couldn't help but look at Di Beichen beside her. Just as Shangguan Yingying had said, Di Beichen's appearance was enough to charm anyone. Even a woman wouldn't be able to have such a good-looking face, yet it was on a man's face. Thinking back to the first time she saw Di Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned. Even after seeing it so many times, she still felt that it was a face that could enchant people. Ziren originally wanted to refute Shangguan Yingying, but after hearing the latter's impeccable reasoning, he didn't know how to refute. What Yingying said seems to make some sense. Ziren looked at Di Baichen doubtfully. Feeling Ziren's curious gaze, Di Baichen's face suddenly became gloomy. He had lived for so long, and it was normal for women to take a fancy to him. However, this was the first time a man had taken a fancy to him. "Why are you looking at me like that?" His low voice carried a bit of threat and warning. Ziren touched his head and smiled brightly. Hee, I naturally know that you don't have such thoughts. Di Baichen's face darkened. Shangguan Yingying walked to Di Baichen's side and said, Baichen, I'm telling the truth. Although there are only a few people in the Shengxian continent who have such fetishes, they really do exist. You haven't encountered it before, but it doesn't mean that you won't encounter it now. In fact, with your face, it's very normal for you to encounter such a situation. Di Baichen's face darkened even more. You see, that Ao Lingxiao has always been alone. He's not interested in anyone. Hong Zhuang is a first-class beauty, right? But he didn't pay much attention to Hong Zhuang at all. He made it clear from the beginning that he was paying attention to you. Shangguan Yingying patted her forehead. I finally understand. What do you understand? Di Baichen gritted his teeth and asked. Didn't Ao Lingxiao say that he wasn't sure about one thing? If he's sure, he'll tell us. It seems like it's his first time liking a man, so he's suffering in his heart. But he can't bear to give up on you, so he's been following you and thinking about whether he really likes men. Shangguan Yingying could not hide the excitement on her face. She looked as if she had discovered a new continent. She looked at Wen Ziren and Bailey Hongzhuang excitedly and said, Do you think my analysis makes sense? Poochie. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. She didn't know how Shangguan Yingying's imagination went wild. She actually thought of such a possibility. At this time, Di Baichen said in a deep voice, Ziren, I think you need to take care of Yingying. What is she researching all day long? Be careful when she finds a man to pair you up with. After all, your face is also a feast for the eyes. When Ziran, who was originally snickering, heard Di Baichen's words and couldn't help but stare blankly, suddenly unable to continue laughing. In the next second, Di Baichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and walked forward. It seems that I have to keep my wife away from Yingying. Otherwise, it's not worth it if she's led astray. Shangguan Yingying looked at Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's back in astonishment. She quickly said, Hey, wait for us. However, Ziren pulled Shangguan Yingying's hand and said, Yingying, tell me, where did you learn this from? Chapter 3690. Bailey Hongzhuang walked beside Di Baichen. Looking at his stiff and awkward face, she couldn't hide the smile on her lips. Wife, do you think it's funny? Di Baichen raised his eyebrows and asked. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled and nodded. Haha, it's funny. I think Yingying's words make sense. Wife, you've been led astray by Yingying. Baichen, what if it's really as Yingying guessed? What will you do? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Baichen with a smile. She rarely saw Di Baichen so embarrassed. It was really interesting. Thinking about it, if all of this was true, she really didn't know what Di Baichen would do. I'll kill him, Di Baichen said lightly. Pfft. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. Haha, I hope Ao Lingxiao doesn't really have such thoughts. On the other side. Achoo. Achoo. Ao Lingxiao sneezed a few times in a row. He rubbed his nose and his face was full of doubts. Is there someone talking about me today? Why do I keep sneezing? It's really strange. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying came to the resource room together. The Penglai Palace's resource room could be called the Resource Hall. The scope was undoubtedly much larger than they had imagined. Penglai Palace's foundation is really extraordinary. Just by looking at this resource hall, you can tell that there must be a lot of treasures inside. Shangguan Yingying's face was full of emotion. She had long felt that this place was definitely not simple. Now it seemed that she was right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I hope there are treasures here that I need. I think there should be. Shangguan Yingying smiled faintly. This place is so big. The number of treasures inside seems to be quite a lot. Although the treasures that you need to improve your spiritual power are not many, with the foundation of Penglai Palace, they should still exist. Hearing this, the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips widened a little. I hope it's really as you expect. To Bailey Hongzhuang, spiritual power was undoubtedly extremely important. Whether it was alchemy, inscription, or other skills, they were all inseparable from one's spiritual force. The reason why she was able to master these skills was because of her outstanding spiritual force. It was precisely because her mental strength was very strong that she was able to achieve twice the result with half the effort when learning these things. Otherwise, even if her talent was very good, it would be very difficult for her to reach this step. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zichen arrived at the resource room, they discovered that it was also a very lively place. At this moment, there were many cultivators inside choosing the cultivation resources they needed. The layout of the resource room was very simple. Rows of shelves were placed with different levels of treasures. The bottom of each treasure was marked with its name, function, and points needed to exchange for it. The closer to the back of the counter, the higher the value of the treasure. Similarly, the more points needed to exchange for it. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at it and directly gave up on the several counters in front of her. Resources that could improve one's spiritual power were more difficult to find than resources that could directly improve one's cultivation. She did not need to look at the low-level resources at all. If such a treasure really existed in the resource hall, then the points needed to exchange for it would not be small. Chapter 3691. Listening to Shangguan Yingying's words, Bailey Hongzhuang glanced around and nodded. Okay, if you find it, call me. No problem. If you see any resources you like, you can also tell me. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and blinked, giggling. Okay. Shangguan Yingying nodded. I actually don't need anything now. The most important thing is to help you find treasures that can help improve your spiritual power. After the two separated, Bailey Hongzhuang shuttled through these counters. There were indeed many treasures here. Every one of them was something that cultivators would be envious of. Many things that were rarely seen or appeared in auctions could be seen here. This also made Bailey Hongzhuang understand how deep the heritage of Penglai Palace was. Many of the things here are difficult to find even in auctions on ordinary days. I didn't expect that you can exchange them with points here. It seems that this Penglai Palace has included many precious treasures. Xiaobai looked at the many treasures in front of her and couldn't help but sigh. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Indeed, Penglai Palace can have such a status. It is precisely because there are resources that other places can't have that it can attract so many cultivators. This was the attraction of a big force. Perhaps the treasures that couldn't be found in other places could be easily obtained here. There are so many treasures here. If we can take some away, we will be rich. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed brightly, her hands constantly rubbing. Her excited look was like she was having a beautiful dream. She was almost drooling. Looking at Xiao Hei's eager look, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly said, Xiao Hei, don't have any ideas about these treasures. This place looks very ordinary, but there are definitely many strong cultivators. As long as someone dares to have any thoughts of robbing, they will definitely be subdued in the first place. As early as when she walked in, Bailey Hongzhuang had already felt several auras here. These were definitely the auras of strong cultivators. At the very least, with her current cultivation, she was no match for him, so it was better for her to stay put. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiao Hei could not help but droop her head. Sigh, there are so many treasures that I can only look at. What a waste. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Penglai Palace must have spent a lot of effort to get so many treasures. It would be strange if you could take them away so easily. All right. Xiao Hei pursed her lips. Master, speaking of which, there are very few treasures that can increase one's mental strength. We've seen all sorts of treasures along the way, but we haven't seen any that can increase mental strength. Such treasures are rare to begin with. Let's be patient. If we really don't have any, we can think of something after we go to the Demon Training Tower. Although the Demon Training Tower was different from the Penglai Palace, there were also many treasures there. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai were searching and talking, Shangguan Yingying's voice suddenly came from not far away. Chapter 3692. If I say it's mine, then it's mine. Chu Yunyao glanced at Shangguan Yingying indifferently. After noticing Shangguan Yingying's clothes, the disdain in her eyes grew stronger. You're just an outer palace disciple. How dare you snatch something from me? Don't you want to stay in Penglai Palace? What a big tone. Shangguan Yingying frowned coldly. Although I haven't been in Penglai Palace for a long time, it's rare to see someone as unreasonable as you. Oh! Chu Yunyao's lips curled up a little. So you're new. No wonder you're so daring. Since you're new, I'll kindly advise you that you'd better not snatch things from inner palace disciples in Penglai Palace. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble. Chu Yunyao patted Shangguan Yingying's chest, her eyes full of ridicule. Be good and let go of your hand. Even if you really want this thing, I'm afraid you don't have enough points to exchange for it. Don't look down on me. Shangguan Yingying glared. I'm also an inner palace disciple. Who said I don't have points to exchange for it? I got this thing first. Even you inner palace disciples don't have the right to snatch it. Chu Yunyao was slightly stunned. She looked at Shangguan Yingying's appearance and couldn't help laughing. Ha ha, you said you're an inner palace disciple? You didn't just come today, did you? Don't you know that the clothes of inner palace disciples and outer palace disciples look the same, but in fact they are different? With your appearance, it's ridiculous to pretend to be an inner palace disciple. Shangguan Yingying looked down at her clothes and felt a little helpless. She had just been promoted to inner palace disciple today, so she didn't immediately change into inner palace disciple's clothes. Who would have thought that she would encounter such trouble? Cut the crap. In short, I've taken a fancy to this thing. I won't give it to you. Don't even think about it. With that, Shangguan Yingying grabbed the thing with both hands. From her serious expression, one could tell that she would definitely not hand it over. She had been looking for a long time but hadn't seen a treasure that could improve mental strength. She thought it was gone. She didn't expect to see it on the counter behind her. Naturally, she was extremely happy. Since she came to Penglai Palace, she always felt guilty to Bailey Hongzhuang because she couldn't help her. Anyway, she was very happy to find this treasure. At least it was something that could help Hong. However, just when she took it in her hand, a woman grabbed her hands handed over. She had never seen such an unreasonable person. If you hand the item over to me now, I can let bygones be bygones. If you continue to be stubborn, don't blame me for not warning you. A hint of impatience flashed in Chu Yunyao's eyes. With her reputation in the inner hall, how many people dared to snatch things from her? What can you do if I don't give it to you? Shangguan Yingying looked at Chu Yunyao coldly. She didn't want to cause any more trouble. After all, they had just entered the inner palace and the inner palace disciples were strong. It was not good to cause trouble. Chapter 3693. If you don't hand it over. Chu Yunyao's eyes suddenly became cold. In this Penglai Palace, it's normal for inner palace disciples to kill a few outer palace disciples. When Bailey Hongzhuang arrived and heard this remark, her slender willow leaf eyebrows suddenly wrinkled. In her sight, she saw a woman wearing a red gauze dress, outlining her graceful figure. Her long black hair was elegant and moving, and even the hairband was dazzling red. Ostentatious, dancing, proud, disdainful. At first sight, Chu Yunyao gave Bailey Hongzhuang such a feeling. At this moment, Chu Yunyao was looking down at Shangguan Yingying, as if the latter was an ant that could be pinched to death with a light pinch. Yingying, what happened? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Shangguan Yingying, and her eyes suddenly fell on the lavender fruit in her hand. Yunling fruit. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately recognized the origin of this fruit. Among the many heaven and earth treasures, there were not many that were useful for mental strength, and this Yunling fruit belonged to one of the more outstanding ones. It was just that this Yunling fruit was rarely seen, even in auctions, so Bailey Hongzhuang did not have much hope. She did not expect that there would be a Yunling fruit here, but after seeing the Yunling fruit and then looking at Shangguan Yingying and Chu Yunyao, she had already roughly understood what had happened. When Chu Yunyao saw Bailey Hongzhuang for the first time, her expression froze for a moment, her pupils could not help but dilate a little, and a strong shock flashed in her heart. Beautiful, exquisite, otherworldly beauty. In a short moment, many words flashed in Chu Yunyao's mind. She had never seen such a beautiful woman. Even as a woman, she had to admit that this was a face that could turn all living things upside down. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, it would have been hard for her to believe that there would be such a wonderful person in this world. All along, she had boasted that her appearance was outstanding, and her sister Chu Yunshang was the most beautiful person in her heart, but she never thought that today, her firm belief would actually waver for a moment. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang coming, Shangguan Yingying frowned and whispered, "Hongzhuang, I got the Yunling fruit first, but she insisted that I give it to her. I didn't want to, so she wanted to take it by force." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed a little, but her expression was very calm. She had vaguely heard the conversation between Shangguan Yingying and Shangguan Yingying, so she understood. "I am Chu Yunyao of the Inner Palace. This Yunling fruit is exactly what I need." Chu Yunyao still raised her chin, and there was no modesty in her words. So what if the woman in front of her was very outstanding? Whatever she took a fancy to was hers. This was because she had already noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang was also wearing the uniform of an Outer Palace disciple. As long as it was an Outer Palace disciple, she would not pay attention to it at all. "If you give this Yunling fruit to me, I can give you some benefit. If you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, then don't blame me for being rude." Chapter 3694. "Master, this woman is really arrogant. It's disgusting." Xiao He lazily looked at Chu Yunyao in front of her. Although they had not stayed in Penglai Palace for a long time, most people were not so annoying. It's really an eye-opener for her to be so righteous when she snatches people's things. Xiao Bai was also speechless for a while. "I think this woman's disgust is comparable to that of Duan Huali." Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Chu Yunyao indifferently and said, "We have no interest in your so-called benefits. We'll take our leave first. Goodbye." As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang took Shangguan Yingying's hand and prepared to leave. From the first time she saw this woman, she felt that this woman must be the type who would easily cause trouble. She really had no interest in being entangled with her. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not give her face, Chu Yunyao's face suddenly turned cold and her eyes were covered with a layer of haze. "Did I say you can go?" The threatening voice was cold and Chu Yunyao's gaze was like a sharp blade shooting straight at the backs of Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying. With her reputation, the outer hall disciples had always been eager to please her. At this moment, she had already introduced herself and the other party still dared to not give her face, which naturally aroused the anger in her heart. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not pay attention to Chu Yunyao's words at all and continued to move forward without stopping. In her opinion, Chu Yunyao was completely used to throwing tantrums and actually thought that everyone should revolve around her. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang completely ignored her threat, Chu Yunyao's face became more and more unsightly. This person dared to embarrass her like this. "Damn it!" Chu Yunyao secretly spat. Her figure moved and quickly blocked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying. "Do you think that you can successfully take the thing away after walking out of this resource hall? Once we leave the resource hall, the spiritual cloud fruit is ours. What's wrong with taking it away?" Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold and her words were as cold as ice. Chu Yunyao chuckled. You have to see clearly that the points required for this cloud spirit fruit are not enough for you as outer hall disciples. You don't have to worry about that. Just because you don't have enough doesn't mean that we don't have enough. Bailey Hongzhuang lifted her delicate chin, and her beautiful eyes flashed with a cold light. Although she did not like to look for trouble, this spiritual cloud fruit was exactly what she needed. There was no way she would give it away. You. Chu Yunyao glared at them. If you dare to go out, I guarantee that you won't see the sun tomorrow. At this moment, Chu Yunyao's eyes also became ruthless. It was just an outer hall disciple who dared to be so arrogant in front of her. She was really angry. It seemed that she would have to teach these two newbies a lesson for not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. What big words! The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips suddenly rose and her smile was bright and mocking. I'm afraid it's not that easy to take my life. Since senior sister wants to try, then I'll wait for you. As soon as these words came out, Chu Yunyao could not help but be stunned. The incredulity in her eyes grew stronger. She had never thought that this woman would be so unyielding and ignore her threat. Chapter 3695. Just as the conflict between the two sides was getting more and more intense, a voice suddenly rang out, Chu Yunyao, why don't you give me some face and let this matter drop? With this voice, both Chu Yunyao and Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. However, when they saw the person who had come, their expressions were somewhat complicated. Duan Huali? Chu Yunyao looked at the strong and tall figure in front of her in surprise, as if she didn't expect to see him here. Duan Huali slowly walked over with his hands behind his back. His handsome face was filled with a graceful smile. Chu Yunyao, you're a senior sister after all. It's unbecoming of you to be like this. They're my friends. Why don't you give me some face and let this matter drop? It's Duan Huali. I didn't expect to meet him here. A cold light flashed in Shangguan Yingying's eyes. She remembered clearly that Duan Huali had sent people to the training ground of the outer hall to attack them. She didn't expect that he would come to help them now. It was really funny. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. She didn't expect to meet him so coincidentally. Ever since she handed over the prescription of the healing medicine, she hadn't seen Duan Huali. She only thought that Duan Huali knew that their identities were different from before and didn't dare to cause trouble for them anymore. This was also what she was happy to see. However, she didn't expect to meet him today. Although Duan Huali was speaking for them at the moment, it also told her that Duan Huali hadn't given up yet. If he had given up, Duan Huali would definitely not have come to cause trouble at this time. Since we came back, we haven't seen Xue Changdong. In my opinion, Xue Changdong most likely died at the hands of Duan Huali. Shangguan Yingying lowered her voice and said, Does this guy think that we don't know anything, so he wants to be the good guy? They had inquired about Xue Changdong as soon as they returned. After all, this guy had almost put Di Beichen and the others in danger. It would be out of character if they did not teach him a lesson. However, they did not expect that they would not get any information about Xue Changdong even after asking so many people. It was as if Xue Changdong had completely disappeared after returning. However, they still heard from a cultivator that Xue Changdong had been to the inner hall. In this way, it was easy to determine the next piece of news. Killing people to silence them was really in line with Duan Huali's style. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, Maybe Xue Changdong didn't reveal any information before. Maybe he thought that we didn't know anything. If that's the case, then this Duan Huali is really funny. Shangguan Yingying sneered in her heart. I'd like to see what this Duan Huali is going to do. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. In her heart, she had already labeled Duan Huali as a dead man. It was just that she could not take his life for the time being. However, the final result was certain. Di Beichen was the person she cherished the most. This guy wanted to do something to the person she cherished the most. She would not forgive him. Chu Yunyao looked at Duan Huali indifferently and suddenly smiled. Duan Huali, I have never seen you have any hobby of helping others. Could it be that you have taken a fancy to this new female disciple this time? Chapter 3696. Haha. Chu Yunyao chuckled. I've known you for so many years. Don't tell me I don't even know your temperament? You've always been unable to take your eyes off beautiful women. This woman's appearance is so outstanding. It would be strange if you could let her go. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but look at each other. It seemed that their expectations were really right. It was because of Bailey Hongzhuang that Duan Huali attacked Di Baichen and Wen Ziren. However, Shangguan Yingying didn't understand. Why didn't Duan Huali kill her as well? Did he think that she was not a threat because she was a woman? Duan Huali frowned slightly. Chu Yunyao, why are you saying these irrelevant things? Looking at Duan Huali's very nervous appearance, afraid that she would say something she shouldn't say, Chu Yunyao's eyes became gloomier. She had known Duan Huali for many years, so she naturally understood Duan Huali's temperament. Even if he always had a lot of women around him, he never minded. But what was going on now? She had never seen Duan Huali like this. Thinking of this, Chu Yunyao couldn't help but glance at Bailey Hongzhuang. After seeing the latter's indifferent and casual appearance, her heart gradually sank. Could it be that Duan Huali was serious this time? Did he really like this woman? At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed Chu Yunyao's constantly changing face. For some reason, she felt that there seemed to be a lot of stories in Chu Yunyao's expression. Anyone could see the reason why Duan Huali suddenly stood up and spoke at this moment, but Chu Yunyao looked like she had lost her soul, which was a little strange. The next second, Chu Yunyao's expression returned to normal. She said, Duan Huali, if this Yunling fruit is what I want, I will do you a favor. But this Yunling fruit is what my sister wants, so I can't do you a favor. Duan Huali couldn't help but frown when he heard this. You did it on purpose? Chu Yunyao's face turned cold. Duan Huali, I have no intention of playing with you. Weren't you interested in my sister before? You caused such a huge commotion back then. Don't tell me that you're going to snatch my sister's things for the sake of 2 outer palace disciples? Duan Huali's expression froze when he heard Chu Yunyao mention the word sister. At this moment, seeing Chu Yunyao's words, his expression couldn't help but become even uglier. Nothing happened between me and your sister. Even if we talk about it, it's just a matter of the past. What's the point of mentioning it now? Haha, Chu Yunyao sneered. Yes, how could I forget that you have always been fickle? All women are just your temporary interests. Master, why do I feel that the atmosphere between Chu Yunyao and Duan Huali is a little unusual? Xiao He rubbed her chin, her face full of gossipy expressions. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Indeed, there should be a story between the two of them. Otherwise, it shouldn't be like this. She clearly noticed that the smile on Chu Yunyao's lips was self-deprecating, which was very strange. According to the content of their conversation, there should be something between Chu Yunyao's sister and Duan Huali, but why did Chu Yunyao laugh at herself? Chapter 3697. Chu Yunyao, I just want to ask you if you're willing to do me a favor. Why are you talking about all this nonsense? Duan Huali frowned. If he had not been forced to, he would not have wanted to meet Chu Yunyao at all. This woman was completely troublesome. Since he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had concocted such a healing medicine, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was different from the rest. This woman was not only beautiful, but also strong and talented. As an inner disciple, he knew too well that this healing medicine had solved the problem that had troubled everyone for many years. Bailey Hongzhuang could do it so easily, which proved that her medical skills were really terrible. Not only that, Bailey Hongzhuang refused him so decisively and did not give him any leeway, which also proved that Bailey Hongzhuang was loyal. If such a woman could become his woman, she would definitely not betray him. In the past, he had never taken the women around him seriously. On the one hand, it was because these women fell into his hands too easily. He was not a stupid person. Naturally, he could see that everyone was just doing it for their own interest. However, for the first time, Bailey Hongzhuang made him feel so different, so he was willing to spend more time and energy on Bailey Hongzhuang. During this period of time, he had been looking for an opportunity to get close to Bailey Hongzhuang, but the latter was in the limelight. With Di Beichen by her side, he could not find a suitable opportunity. He did not expect to see Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen separated today. He felt that this was a good opportunity, so he naturally followed. He wanted to strike up a conversation with Bailey Hongzhuang, but he did not expect to make such a scene. Duan Huali, I have made it very clear that this Yunling fruit is what my sister needs, so it is absolutely impossible to let it go. If you must stand up for this woman, then we can only be enemies. Chu Yunyao's eyes gradually sharpened. You have to think about it carefully. This Yunling fruit requires a lot of points. Do you want to spend so much for this outer disciple? You don't have to worry about the points. Now in the entire Penglai Palace, there are not many people who have more points than her. What do you mean? Chu Yunyao frowned. For a moment, she could not understand the meaning of Duan Huali's words. It seems that you don't know that she is Bailey Hongzhuang who made the healing medicine, Duan Huali said slowly. As Duan Huali's voice fell, Chu Yunyao couldn't help but stare at Bailey Hongzhuang. Her gaze changed, and there was a bit of astonishment and surprise. She didn't expect that the young woman in front of her was the rumored Bailey Hongzhuang. She had been in retreat before, so she didn't see Bailey Hongzhuang in person. At this moment, she had just returned from the experiential learning. She didn't expect that the person in front of her was Bailey Hongzhuang. However, now that she thought about the comments everyone had said, she was really as beautiful as a fairy with a moving temperament. It was just that she was a little younger than she thought. Not only that, they are not the outer disciples in your words. Today, the Hall Master has made an exception and promoted them to inner disciples. Duan Huali continued. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's ability could be said to be at the bottom of the inner disciples, everyone knew very well that Bailey Hongzhuang had a promising future in Penglai Palace. Chapter 3698. I was wondering why Duan Huali suddenly changed his temperament this time. It turns out that this woman is extraordinary, Chu Yunyao said meaningfully, but her eyes looking at Bailey Hongzhuang became deeper and deeper, and there was a hint of resentment. Bailey Hongzhuang, let me tell you, in this Penglai Palace, if you rely on your own strength, you still have a chance to live well, but if you want to rely on a man just by relying on a face, sooner or later you will end up being abandoned. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly. You can rest assured, I will definitely not end up like that, but looking at the way you say this, it seems like you are speaking from the bottom of your heart. Chu Yunyao's expression was stagnant, and her whole body was stiff for a moment. Then she glared at Bailey Hongzhuang with hatred, but she didn't say anything. Duan Huali, this Yunling fruit was taken by my sister, Chu Yunshang. Now you dare to treat my sister like this, you have to deal with the consequences yourself. As soon as her voice fell, Chu Yunyao didn't say anything more and left angrily. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but look at each other. She was just unhappy with Chu Yunyao's statement, so she refuted it, but she didn't expect Chu Yunyao's painful expression. It seemed that she had inadvertently told the truth. She finally left. Shangguan Yingying breathed a sigh of relief. She was worried that Chu Yunyao had been unwilling to let go. This matter was a bit difficult. She didn't expect that after Duan Huali reported the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang, she would leave so sensibly. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Shangguan Yingying on the shoulder and said, "It's okay. We are right in this matter. Even if she doesn't want to leave, she won't get anything good. She never had the habit of giving her things to others, let alone when they were in the right." After seeing that Chu Yunyao had finally left, Duan Huali's slightly gloomy face also became better. He turned around and smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang, saying, "Junior sister Bailey, no one will snatch this Yunling fruit from you anymore." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head and said, "Thank you, senior brother Duan." Although she hated Duan Huali very much, now was not the time to shed all pretense of cordiality. She did not want to cause many twists and turns when she left Penglai Palace. With that, Bailey Hongzhuang pulled Shangguan Yingying away, but Duan Huali quickly followed. "Junior sister Bailey, we haven't seen each other in a long time. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Everyone is busy with cultivation on weekdays. I don't think senior brother Duan is such a free person. It's better not to waste time." Duan Huali smiled faintly. "If I want to spend time on others, it's naturally a waste. However, I don't feel that it's a waste to spend time on junior sister Bailey. On the contrary, I think it's a kind of enjoyment." The low voice was full of ambiguity. Just by opening his mouth, Duan Huali had already shown his purpose incisively and vividly. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly, but her face was very cold. "I feel the opposite of senior brother Duan." Her merciless words caused Duan Huali's expression to turn awkward. However, he quickly recovered and said, "Junior sister Bailey, I don't think I have offended you. Why do you have such an expression when you see me? Aren't you being too unreasonable?" Chapter 3699. Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude was very firm, as if talking to Duan Huali was a test of her patience. She had never liked this kind of person who stuck to her like a dog skin plaster, let alone an arrogant and stubborn guy like Duan Huali. It's too early to make a conclusion about whether there is fate or not. Duan Huali did not care about Bailey Hongzhuang's rejection. On the contrary, he seemed to have guessed that Bailey Hongzhuang would have such an expression. It didn't matter what she said. Looking at Duan Huali like this, Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but exclaim. In terms of shamelessness, Duan Huali was really at the peak. After Bailey Hongzhuang paid the points, she put the Yunling fruit into her Qiankuan bag. No matter what, it was a great harvest for her to be able to get the Yunling fruit today. Although Duan Huali's appearance was an eyesore, as long as he didn't exist, it was fine. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had been unwilling to pay attention to him, after leaving a few cold words and leaving, Duan Huali looked at her departing back, and a smile slowly appeared on his lips. "Bailey Hongzhuang, you will be my woman sooner or later." However, Duan Huali did not notice that not far behind him, Chu Yunyao's gaze was on him. After hearing Duan Huali's words that were like an oath, Chu Yunyao's hands could not help but clench into fists. "Duan Huali, that woman's attitude towards you is so cold, but you still shamelessly follow her. It's really surprising." Her dark pupils flashed with a cold and ruthless light. "That woman is so different to you? Hongzhuang, do you think that Chu Yunyao will come looking for trouble with us?" Shangguan Yingying's eyes revealed a trace of worry. "If only I had found the Yunling fruit earlier, then I wouldn't have gotten into such trouble for no reason." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, and reached out to hold Shangguan Yingying's arm as they walked briskly. "Yingying, your speed is already fast enough. At least you got the Yunling fruit before Chu Yunyao. I really have to thank you. If you didn't get the Yunling fruit, I don't know when you would be able to find such a treasure again. As for what Chu Yunyao's plan is, it's not something we can control. She can do whatever she wants. Anyway, we have always been in trouble." Bailey Hongzhuang's face was indifferent. If she was the one who found the cloud spirit fruit first, the situation wouldn't have changed. Since it was destined to be like this, she was not a person who was afraid of trouble. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shangguan Yingying's face looked better. "Then I'm relieved. I always felt guilty in my heart. You did all this for me. What's there to be sorry about? Hongzhuang, you've been helping me ever since we arrived at Penglai Island. I know you value our friendship, but I still feel guilty about it. Moreover, my recklessness sometimes causes me trouble. I'll change for the better in the future. Even if I can't help you, at least I can't cause trouble." Shangguan Yingying looked serious, and her words came from the bottom of her heart. "Yingying, you are treating me as an outsider," Bailey Hongzhuang said. Chapter 3700. Seeing that Shangguan Yingying was so sincere, the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips became softer, but she did not say anything more, because she knew that Shangguan Yingying had already made a decision in her heart, and no matter what she said, it would not change anything. Originally, this situation was not very obvious, but after she gave the fiery fruits to Shangguan Yingying and Wen Ziren, the two of them had some changes in their mood. Since then, they had become inner hall disciples because she had handed over the prescription of the healing medicine, which undoubtedly magnified this problem. Both she and Di Beichen felt this, but Di Beichen had already told her that Wen and Ziren would adjust themselves, so there was no need to worry. Moreover, this was a kind of motivation for them. Whether it was Wen Ziren or Shangguan Yingying, they were never easily discouraged. On the contrary, the more they fought, the braver they became. This was their nature. By the way, Hong Zhuang, I always felt that the atmosphere between Chu Yunyao and Duan Huali just now was a little unusual, don't you think so? Bailey Hongzhuang thought about it and nodded. It is indeed a little strange that Chu Yunyao seems to be particularly concerned about Duan Huali's opinion, and vaguely seems to be unyielding. She never forgot Chu Yunyao's resentful gaze when she left. From a woman's intuition, she felt that Chu Yunyao did not hate her because of the cloud spirit fruit, but because of Duan Huali? That's right, that's what I think. Shangguan Yingying nodded. But that Duan Huali has always liked to provoke women, so it's normal for him to have some emotional debt. But looking at the situation, it should be that there is a king between Duan Huali and Chu Yunshang. I'm not sure why Chu Yunyao is like this. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Why do you care so much? What happened between them has nothing to do with us. Even if there is a conflict, it won't involve us. That's true. Shangguan Yingying smiled faintly. Now that we have the cloudy spiritual fruit, Hongzhuang, I think you should quickly consume it. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will cause more trouble. Shangguan Yingying's expression was complicated. She always felt that Chu Yunyao was not someone who was easy to deal with. The reason why Chu Yunyao left just now had a lot to do with Duan Huali. Now that Duan Huali was no longer here, if Chu Yunyao came looking for trouble again, it would not be a good thing. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. All right, I'll go into seclusion after we return. Once I'm done, we'll set off for the Devil Training Tower. Yes. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang returned to their residence, Di Beichen and Di Beichen had yet to return. Bailey Hongzhuang took the lead and began her closed-door cultivation. To the current them, time was undoubtedly very precious. The sooner she finished her seclusion, the sooner they could head to the Devil Training Tower. Tiangang sect. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left, Si Tuyen and the others had been worried. They did not know how Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were doing. Lan Yunxiao and Yu Linfeng had always planned to head to Penglai Island to find traces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. However, Lan Yunxiao had just taken over the Lan family and still had many things to deal with. It would not be easy for him to leave for a while. Chapter 3701. At the same time, they also contacted the sect master of the Cloud Sword sect. Although they knew that the sect master of the Cloud Sword sect had a fearless personality, they were still shocked that he would so easily allow Wen Ziren and Lan Bingyun to head to that place with an uncertain future. However, after they found the Cloud Sword sect's sect master and chatted for a while, they noticed that the Cloud Sword sect's sect master's courage was truly shocking. In the sect master of the Cloud Sword sect, this was a training that belonged to Wen Ziren and the rest. Everyone's excessive worry would instead shackle their development. Since Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had decided to leave quietly, they must have already made their decision. As their elders, the best method was to respect their decision. This way of thinking was undoubtedly different from Lan Yunxiao and the rest. However, after careful consideration, they understood that the sect master of the Cloud Sword sect's words were reasonable. If they are going out to train, I can be more at ease. However, Di Baichen's condition is so terrible. If anything happens to him, Hong Zhuang definitely won't be able to accept it. This is what I'm most worried about. Mu Lingbing's eyes were filled with worry. Her Hong Zhuang had suffered too much since she was young. Now that everything had gotten better with great difficulty, Di Baichen had fallen into danger. She was a sentimental person and naturally understood how deep Bailey Hongzhuang's feelings were. If something happened to Di Baichen, she was really worried that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't be able to live on. You don't have to worry too much for now. Didn't you say that they have at least a year? At least, there won't be any problems during this year. Lan Yunxiao held Mu Lingbing's shoulders and gently comforted her. A year's time is neither too long nor too short. They will need several months to reach Penglai Island. If they do not succeed in reaching Penglai Island, they will be finished. Mu Lingbing turned to look at Lan Yunxiao, her eyes filled with tears. Yunxiao, what do you think our Hong Zhuang did wrong? Why is the heavens so unfair to her? 20 years ago, she always thought that Hong Zhuang was fortunate to be her daughter. However, after various things happened, not only did Bailey Hongzhuang not enjoy it, she was riddled with scars and shouldered countless hardships at a young age. She really didn't understand why so many things had to be shouldered by Bailey Hongzhuang alone. Don't think of this situation in a bad way. Perhaps Hong Zhuang and the rest are going smoothly. Penglai Island is Penglai Island, there's something that we don't have. Hong Zhuang will be cured. I believe that the heavens is fair, they definitely won't treat Hong Zhuang. Hong Zhuang. Hong Zhuang. Hong Tian is. Really? Will it really be like this? Mu Lingbing held Lan Yunxiao's hand, her eyes filled with hope. Lan Yunxiao nodded firmly. Yes, it definitely will. Situ Yan's mood was also very complicated. One was his biological granddaughter, and the other was the grandson he had raised since he was young. Originally, he was the happiest about their union, but he didn't expect that there would be such twists and turns, making him abnormally worried. Situ, are you thinking about Baichen and the rest again? Chapter 3702. Situ Yan was a person who did not like to express his feelings. He had always buried everything in his heart. Although Mu Jin's had not been with Situ Yan for many years, she was very familiar with his temperament. Every time Situ Yan looked in the direction of Di Baichen's palace, she knew that Situ Yan was worried and thinking about him. Di Baichen's illness had caused everyone's hearts to be in suspense. However, they were also very clear that even if they went to Penglai Palace, they would not be of much help. If they had the herbs, Di Baichen and the rest would definitely think of ways to get their hands on them. If they did not have the herbs, then even if they went, it would be of no use. Hearing this, Situ Yan turned to look at Mu Jin's behind him and said lightly, "They have already left for several months. After such a long time, I wonder how they are doing now. Whether it is Baichen or Hong Zhuang, they are the most outstanding youths I have ever seen. I believe that they will succeed." Mu Jin's had always been very worried in her heart. However, she always believed that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen were people with extraordinary talent. Perhaps these things would be difficult for others, but for Bailey Hongzhuang and Baichen, it was possible. Situ Yan nodded. "I have always watched Baichen grow up. I am very clear about his abilities. It is because of this that I did not let everyone go. I believe that they will be able to solve this problem." Mu Jin smiled faintly. "Although that is the case, don't you still think about it every day? Isn't everyone the same?" "That's true." Just as Mu Jin and Situ Yan were discussing this matter, news suddenly came from outside. Sect Master, a cultivator who claimed to be from Penglai Island, left a letter and a Qiankuan bag at the foot of the mountain before leaving. The great elder hurriedly handed the letter to Situ Yan. Ever since the young sect master left, Everyone had been paying close attention to Penglai Island. Now that there was a letter from Penglai Island, he naturally thought of the young sect master. Perhaps the young sect master had asked someone to send it back. Hearing this news, Si Tu-yen and Mu Jin-se were stunned. This was beyond their expectations. Situ, hurry up and open it. Is there any news about Hong Zhuang and the others? Situ-yen nodded and quickly opened the letter. After reading the contents of the letter, his hands couldn't help but tremble. It's really from Beichen. As soon as these words came out, Mu Jin-se's eyes lit up. She was pleasantly surprised. What did the letter say? The letter says that they have successfully found the medicinal ingredient. Beichen's cursed body has been successfully transformed. They originally planned to return, but they were recruited by the Penglai Palace on the Penglai Island, so they temporarily stayed there to train. They will return in the future, so we don't have to worry. A smile gradually appeared on Si Tu-yan's face. The huge rock that had been pressing down on his heart was finally lifted at this moment. Mu Jin-se took the letter and carefully read through its content. Her face also showed a gratified smile. I knew that they would be blessed by the heavens. Sure enough, they succeeded. Now everyone can breathe a sigh of relief. Chapter 3703. Si Tu-yan's kind and calm face revealed a happy smile. Looks like they are developing well in Penglai Island. We don't need to worry about them. Indeed, these children are all heaven's favored children. You guys might not even be able to compare to them. Mu Jins chuckled. After all, their cultivation talent is much better than yours. Si Tu-yen nodded. Although these words were belittling him, he wasn't angry. Beichen and the rest are indeed much more outstanding than us. Who knows, they might even be able to make a name for themselves in Penglai Island. They have really grown up. Si Tu-yan's deep voice was filled with relief. Although Di Beichen had shown extraordinary maturity early on in Si Tu-yan's heart, he was still that child who had always worked hard by his side. It was only now that he realized that Di Beichen had grown up and could truly take charge of things on his own. Lingbing and the rest have always been worried about Hong Zhuang. We should quickly tell them this news. Mu Jins hurriedly said. During this period of time, she knew that Mu Lingbing had always been filled with guilt towards Bailey Hongzhuang. She thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would finally be able to live a happy life. Who would have thought that something like this would happen again? Speaking of which, the one who suffered the most was Mu Lingbing. That's right, we should make a trip over. I will send someone to inform Limitless Palace. Ever since there was a teleportation array, it was undoubtedly much more convenient to travel from Tiangang's sect to the Lan family. In a short period of time, Si Tu-yen and Mu Jins arrived at the Lan family. The Lan family's disciples all recognized Si Tu-yen and Mu Jins and respectfully welcomed them in. Father, mother, why are you free to come today? Mu Lingbing saw that Si Tu-yen and Mu Jins had suddenly come. While she was happy, she was also surprised. They had always maintained contact with each other, but most of the time, it was Mu Jins who came to visit her. Now that even Si Tu-yen had come, could it be that something had happened? Lingbing, I'm here to tell you a piece of good news. Mu Jins went straight to the point. Good news? Mu Lingbing raised a brow. What good news? Now, her life in the Lan family was very comfortable. The only things she cared about in her heart were Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Other news didn't mean much to her. We received a letter from Hong Zhuang and the rest today. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao, who had just arrived, couldn't help but be startled. They looked at Mu Jins in astonishment, wondering if they had misheard. Mother, what did you say? You said you received a letter from Hong Zhuang? Mu Lingbing's gaze was fixed on Mu Jin-se, worried that she had misheard. Mu Jin-se nodded. That's right. We suddenly received a letter from them today, so we immediately came to tell you the news. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao immediately came forward, their faces filled with surprise and worry. What did the letter say? They said they've successfully found the medicinal ingredients they needed. Baichen's cursed body has been removed, so there's no need to worry about this problem in the future. Mu Jin smiled. Hearing this, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing couldn't help but sigh in relief. A genuine smile finally appeared on their faces. Chapter 3704. They've been recruited by the largest faction on Penglai Island, so they've decided to stay there for a while. They've specially sent a letter back to tell us not to worry. Situ Yen slowly spoke and handed the letter to Lan Yunxiao. It looks like they're doing well on Penglai Island. Although they already knew the contents of the letter, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing couldn't help but read every word again before revealing a relieved smile. Thank the heavens and earth that Baichen is safe and sound. Mu Lingbing's eyes were filled with tears of joy. She had been waiting for news with apprehension, but now she could finally relax. No one knew how tormented her heart had been during this period of time. It wasn't easy for her to be reunited with her daughter, so she didn't want to lose her again. Fortunately, the heavens finally opened their eyes and didn't take away Hong Zhuang's happiness. Oh right, Situ, I remember there's a Qianquan pouch? Mu Jin suddenly asked. They'd been so focused on the letter that they'd forgotten about the pouch. Only now did they remember. I almost forgot about it if you didn't mention it. Situ Yen was startled and immediately took out the Qianquan pouch. This Qianquan pouch was sent along with the letter. I wonder what's inside. As the Qianquan pouch was opened, the four's eyes were filled with curiosity. They didn't know what Bailey Hongzhuang's group had brought back. However, when they clearly saw the contents of the Qianquan bag, the four of them could not help but be stunned. They saw that the Qianquan bag was filled with pieces of sparkling crystal stones, and they even contained dense yuan power ripples. What's this? Mu Lingbing curiously looked at the crystals in front of her. Although she didn't know what they were, she could tell that they weren't simple. There's spirit stones. Situ Yen immediately recognized the spirit stone. This spirit stone is rich in heaven and earth elemental energy. If cultivators use this spirit stone to cultivate, it can greatly increase their cultivation speed. Outside of our island, spirit stones are almost invisible. However, spirit stones are a necessity for everyone on Penglai Island to cultivate. It is precisely because of these spirit stones that many talented cultivators insist on staying on Penglai Island. However, it is not easy to obtain these spirit stones. Although Si Tuyen had never been to Penglai Island, he had a certain understanding of the spirit stones. This is a spirit stone? Lan Yunxiao held the spirit stone in his hand. He had heard of it before but had never seen it before. Situ Yen nodded. That's right. Since it's not easy to obtain spirit stones, how could they send back so many spirit stones? Mu Lingbing's face was full of shock. Even though she had only taken a casual glance, she knew that this was a shocking number. It seems that they did not lie to us. They are really doing well on Penglai Island. Otherwise, they would not have given us so many cultivation resources. Mu Jinsei's lips curled into a smile. Originally, she was a little worried that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had said those words to make them feel more at ease. But now, it seemed that they really could be at ease. Look, there's a piece of paper here. Mu Lingbing's sharp eyes saw that there was a piece of paper in the Qianquan pouch, and immediately took it out. Looking at it, they saw that there were only simple words written on it. Chapter 3705. Situ Yen and the rest's expressions changed when they read the contents of the paper. Penglai Island was a place they'd admired for a long time but had never set foot in. Now they were going to explore it. It looks like these little fellows are already used to their days on Penglai Island. They actually hope that we can go with them. Situ Yen chuckled, his calm face filled with relief and gratification. Lan Yunxiao nodded with a smile. Since Penglai Island can attract so many experts, it must be attractive enough. Baichen and the rest have astonishing talent in cultivation, so that's the most suitable place for them to develop. That's good too. Since that place is suitable for them to cultivate, let them properly gain experience. When they're young, they should do what they want to do. Mu Lingbing's eyes were bright and resplendent. To her, as long as she knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were safe and sound, it was enough. As for what they wanted to do in the future, that was up to them. Originally, with your cultivation talent, you would have been heaven's favored children. But that damned Yusiching delayed you for so many years. Mu Jin's eyes were filled with malice. Even though Yusiching had already been punished, she couldn't help but be angry whenever she thought of her. It could only be said that she didn't have a pair of sharp eyes back then. She actually treated this vicious woman as a true friend, which led to the tragedy of her daughter and granddaughter. Back then, Lan Yunxiao was a genius that stunned everyone. He was able to achieve such results at such a young age and wasn't any weaker than Di Beichen. Unfortunately, when he was in the limelight, he was persecuted by Yu Siqing. Many years of torment and delay caused his body to deteriorate greatly. Fortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were exquisite and managed to adjust Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's bodies back to normal. However, after being delayed for so many years, they would have to spend even more time on cultivation. If this hadn't happened, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing wouldn't have achieved such results. Hearing the regret and hatred in Mu Jin's voice, Mu Lingbing couldn't help but hold her hand. Mother, the rain has passed and the sky is clear. At worst, we can just start over again. It is indeed a pity that we have wasted some time, but we will have more time in the future. That may be the case, but the younger one is, the more room for improvement there is. Mu Jin sighed. How could she not understand that Mu Lingbing was trying to console her? But regret was of no use. In the past, we only wanted to increase our strength, but after going through so many things, I feel that it's most important for us to stay together. Mu Lingbing's eyes were calm and her smile was sweet. In the past, she always had many things she wanted to do. Now, she just wanted her loved ones to be safe and sound. Being able to stay with her family was her greatest wish. Lan Yunxiao looked at Mu Lingbing affectionately. His thoughts were the same as Mu Lingbing's. Nothing was more important than being with his family. Seeing Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing like this, Mu Jin smiled comfortably. I didn't expect you two children to be even more insightful than me. But you're right. With your current situation, you already have many things you should have. Chapter 3706. Spirit stones are very helpful for cultivators to raise their cultivation. With these spirit stones, you'll be able to increase your cultivation faster. Situ Yen looked at Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. Both of their talents were excellent, but they had been delayed. However, after so many years of suppression, once it erupted, the speed was extremely fast. Most importantly, he discovered that Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yunxi's cultivation speed was extremely fast, far surpassing his expectations. If they continued to develop like this, he believed that the two would be able to obtain the attention of the past again. Lan Yunxiao nodded with a smile. There are many spirit stones here. Let's divide them. Bing, and I will take Limitless Palace's share. Now that the four major forces had already joined forces, they were bound together for good or ill. Limitless Palace had helped them a lot to reach this point. Lan Yunxiao was also grateful to Yu Linfeng. On one hand, it was because Yu Linfeng had taken care of Bailey Hongzhuang. On the other hand, it was because of Yu Linfeng's generosity and trust. If he hadn't cultivated on Yu Linfeng's stairway to heaven, his cultivation speed would have been extremely slow. That's right. Then you two should make a trip there and tell them the good news. Si Tuyen nodded. During this period of time, they've been worried about Hongzhuang just as much as we have. That's right. I'm sure they'll be very happy after hearing the news. When Mu Lingbing told the news to Yu Linfeng and Yu Linfeng, they were first stunned before revealing joyful smiles. They actually sent a letter back? Nangong Wu's eyes flickered with disbelief. Mu Lingbing nodded. That's right. When we first received the letter, we couldn't help but be astonished. However, the handwriting is indeed Beichen's. As long as we know they're safe and sound, we can be at ease. Yu Linfeng smiled comfortably. It seems like the heavens aren't unkind to them. They've successfully found the herbs and Beichen's constitution has successfully changed. Now we don't have to worry anymore. That's right. Lan Yunxiao sighed. The younger generation's performance has always been outstanding. Perhaps we won't be so successful even if we go there. Yu Linfeng chuckled and nodded. I agree with what you said. These young people are really amazing. These spirit stones were sent back by Hong Zhuang and the others. This is yours. Lan Yunxiao handed the Qiankuan pouch to Yu Linfeng. Spirit stones? Yu Linfeng was slightly taken aback. They actually brought spirit stones back? They must be living a good life on Penglai Island. That's why they have the time to care about us. Mu Lingbing smiled. They also said that they hope we can go to Penglai Island together in the future. I see. Yu Linfeng smiled and said, this spirit stone is an excellent cultivation resource for cultivators. It can double the results with half the effort. Nangong Wu's eyes flickered with excitement. Hong Zhuang is so outstanding. Whether it's her alchemy or medical skills, they've reached the pinnacle. With her around, I think it won't be a problem to get the spirit stones. It was precisely because she knew Bailey Hongzhuang had such abilities that she wasn't too worried. After all, if they were just cultivators, they might encounter a lot of trouble. However, if they were doctors or alchemists, most people wouldn't look for trouble. Chapter 3707. When Di Beichen and when Ziren returned, they noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to be cultivating in her room. However, Shangguan Yingying was nowhere to be seen. Hong Zhuang is cultivating, where has Yingying run off to? When Ziren's eyes flashed with confusion. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying had been together. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had returned, Shangguan Yingying should have returned as well. Why was she nowhere to be seen? She should be nearby. Perhaps she's strolling around somewhere else? Di Beichen slowly said. When Ziren spread his hands, let's wait for a while. She should be back soon. However, as night gradually fell, they still had not seen Shangguan Yingying's figure. The worry in their hearts grew even more intense. Something's not right. Yingying couldn't possibly have left for so long. When Ziren furrowed his brows and his expression turned serious. He had been with Shangguan Yingying for so long and understood her personality very well. She couldn't possibly have left for so long without any instructions. Di Beichen also had a bad premonition in his heart. I'm afraid that something has happened. Something has happened? Ziren was shocked. His dark eyes suddenly focused and his usually gentle face revealed a rare look of anxiety and worry. We've only just arrived at the inner palace today. What could have happened to her here? Indeed, our only enemy in the inner palace is Duan Huali. However, Duan Huali only wants to attack the two of us. He shouldn't have done anything to Yingying. Di Beichen's eyes darkened. This situation had exceeded their expectations. Damn it, it's been 4 to 6 hours since this afternoon. If something has happened, then Yingying, once he thought of a certain possibility, Ziren's eyes instantly turned red. He clenched his fists tightly. If something had happened to Yingying, he didn't dare to think of the consequences. Ziren, calm down first. Di Beichen put his big hand on Ziren's shoulder. We must calmly think about who did this. Only when we know this can we take action. When Ziren, who was about to lose his mind, gradually calmed down after hearing Di Beichen's words. However, his eyes were still red. Although we have many enemies in Penglai Palace, since Hong Zhuang handed over the prescription of the healing medicine, most people no longer dare to be our enemy. In the inner palace, except for Duan, there is no one who is our opponent. But Duan Huali, there. No one else in the inner palace. There to be no other enemy to be found. To be our opponent. But Duan Huns, in the inner palace has no other. Even if the other party is really looking for trouble, I think they'll be looking for trouble with us. It's indeed strange that they're targeting Yingying. Di Beichen's deep eyes were full of thoughts. Hong Zhuang is in seclusion now. We can't forcibly interrupt her. Otherwise, it will be bad if it backfires. When Ziren clutched his hair tightly with both hands. I can't think of a single possibility. If I had known earlier, I would have accompanied Yingying in the afternoon. That way, Yingying would have been fine. Beichen, what kind of danger do you think Yingying will be in? Ziren raised his eyes and looked at Di Beichen. His eyes were full of nervousness. The hope was like a candle flame, as if it would be extinguished with a slight blow. 4 to 6 hours. If the other party really wanted Shangguan Yingying's life, then she would have disappeared from this world. Chapter 3708. Hong Zhuang was with Yingying in the afternoon. Since Hong Zhuang can go into seclusion without worry, it means that nothing happened. Maybe Yingying just went out and hasn't returned yet. Di Beichen comforted Ziren, but when he saw Ziren's bloodshot eyes, he knew that his comforting words were useless. In fact, he also understood Ziren's feelings. If something happened to Hong Zhuang, he probably wouldn't be any better than when Ziren. Let's ask the cultivators living nearby first. Maybe they know something. Di Beichen said. Ziren's eyes lit up and he quickly nodded. Yes, maybe someone saw her. In the next second, Di Beichen and Ziren split up. As long as someone saw the direction Shangguan Yingying left, they might be able to find some clues. Ao Lingxiao opened the door and saw Di Beichen and Ziren anxiously asking the cultivators around. Seeing this, he couldn't help but wonder, "What are you doing?" Seeing Ao Lingxiao, Di Beichen quickly asked, "Ao Lingxiao, did you see Yingying in the afternoon?" They asked many people around, but no one seemed to have seen her. They couldn't get any results. They had expected this. After all, most cultivators were busy cultivating in their houses. There weren't many people who could pay attention to the situation outside. Ao Lingxiao nodded and said matter-of-factly, "I saw her." As soon as these words came out, when Ziren suddenly rushed in front of Ao Lingxiao and tightly pulled on Ao Lingxiao's clothes, then where did she go? Seeing Ziren like this, Ao Lingxiao couldn't help but be stunned. He seemed to be dumbfounded and said, "What's wrong with you guys? Yingying is missing. We can't find any trace of her." Di Beichen explained. However, Ziren didn't care about all this. He pulled Ao Lingxiao's collar and asked, "Tell me, where did Yingying go?" "When I came out earlier, I happened to see Shangguan Yingying. I saw her running outside in a hurry, so I asked her. She said she was going to look for you." Ao Lingxiao frowned. "I didn't think too much about it at that time. I just thought that she was looking for you for something urgent, so I went back to the house." "Looking for us?" Ziren was slightly taken aback. "But we didn't see her. You said that Yingying went to look for us in a hurry?" Di Beichen immediately noticed the main point and asked again. Ao Lingxiao nodded. "That's right. She looked quite anxious at that time. I wanted to ask her a few more questions, but she completely ignored me and ran away." "Something's not right." Di Beichen's eyes darkened. "Hong Zhuang is currently in closed-door cultivation and nothing has happened. Logically speaking, Yingying wouldn't rush to find us. But if she's in such a hurry, she must have been deceived." Ziren's eyes changed. He seemed to understand everything. "It seems that the other party used us as bait to lure Yingying out. But who is this person?" Di Beichen frowned. He couldn't think of a possible candidate. Ao Lingxiao also understood that this matter was unusual. Although Shangguan Yingying usually liked to find trouble with him, he also knew that Shangguan Yingying didn't have any ill intentions.